We are here to get to the bottom of the administration's mysterious campaign to deport critically ill children and their families. It appears that this policy has thankfully been reversed after Congress and the American people rose up in an outcry at the cold inhumanity on display in this policy. I am going to treat this hearing as not only in honor of the memory of our late beloved Chairman Elijah Cummings, but as a hearing in direct pursuit of a policy objective that was close to his heart. The threatened deportation of sick children was such an outrage to Chairman Cummings that his very last official act before his death was to issue subpoenas to hold the administration to account. On Wednesday, in the waning hours of his life, through all of his pain and difficulty, Chairman Cummings recognized the indelible stain that this policy would leave on our nation, and he made holding the government accountable his final official act. And we now have a sacred obligation to follow through on his subpoenas to make sure that we defend some of the most vulnerable people on the planet, sick children who have come as strangers to our land to seek medical assistance. So to our witnesses today, I want to be clear, this subcommittee intends to follow through on Chairman Cummings' promise to unearth the truth behind this policy and his desire to ensure that the policy is truly reversed and that our government treats people in this category with the dignity that they deserve. Not only do we owe that to our late beloved chairman, but we owe it to Maria Isabel Bueso, to Jonathan Sanchez, to Serena Badia, and all of the immigrants whose health and whose lives were threatened by the policy implemented by USCIS. USCIS must explain first what the current policy is on deferred action. It cannot keep the process shrouded in secrecy while these kids wait to hear their fate. If we could go to the slide. On September 18th, Acting Secretary of Homeland Security Kevin McAleenan ordered the acting director, Mr. Cuccinelli, who's with us here today, to, quote, ensure that effective immediately USCIS resumes its consideration of non-military deferred action requests on a discretionary case-by-case basis. It is unclear whether USCIS has actually granted relief to anyone since reversing course. He further ordered USCIS to, quote, ensure that the procedure for considering and responding to deferred action requests is consistent throughout USCIS and that discretionary case-by-case deferred action is granted only based on compelling facts and circumstances. What exactly does this mean? What is the problem that USCIS is trying to fix? What changes are being considered? Will any outside stakeholders be consulted? We want to have maximum transparency to ensure that USCIS is not imposing unreasonable requirements on immigrants who deserve our attention and our mercy. In the meantime, USCIS should explain what will happen to people whose prior deferrals have expired while their renewals are still under review. We've heard from the family of a 12-year-old boy with an incurable condition that could cause him to bleed to death if he's not treated correctly. Both of his parents applied in March to renew their deferrals, but have been waiting for months without any decision at all. His father's deferral expired in August. His mother's deferral expires in January. Without a deferral, neither parent would be authorized to stay or work in the United States, threatening their ability to support and care for their sick son. So what does USCIS recommend families like his do while the agency is trying to decide how to reinstate deferred action? How many more people are stuck in this kind of limbo, and what will we do to protect them? We want basic answers to these questions, and we come here not in any kind of gotcha spirit. We just want to deal with a very serious problem that was brought to our committee. The ongoing confusion regarding deferred action reflects the same kind of chaos that apparently produced this policy in the first place and that prompted our last hearing, and for which the administration, I hope today, will provide us answers. What little we've been able to learn about how this policy came to be indicates that it was undertaken in haste without any effort to ascertain what its health and life-threatening effects would be on the people affected. At our hearing in September, we heard the compelling stories of people who were directly harmed by the policy. Isabel Bueso, a 24-year-old woman suffering from a rare disease, testified that deportation would be, quote, a death sentence for me. She told us, "I want to live. I'm a human being with hopes and dreams in my life." Jonathan Sanchez, a 16-year-old suffering from cystic fibrosis, which is a disease that affects people in my family. Jonathan Sanchez told us that upon learning he was facing deportation, he broke down in tears, pleading, quote, "I do not want to die. I don't want to die. If I go back to Honduras now, I will die." In his words, quote, "It is incredibly unfair to kick out sick kids who are in the hospital or at home taking treatments and who are just trying to have better opportunities to live." It's obvious from the testimony that USCIS either did not realize what the real-world implications of its policy would be, or it knew and decided to go ahead anyway. Either reality, I think, would be damning. But the effects on Maria and Jonathan would have been entirely foreseeable if USCIS had sought public feedback before instituting the new policy. According to USCIS, it failed to consult a single external stakeholder before jeopardizing these families. Making matters worse, USCIS did not even issue any public announcement about the policy or provide any guidance to people in Maria and Jonathan's situation or any of the critically ill children and their families about what would come next and what they should be doing. Why not? What was the reason for the secrecy and the surprise? Is it USCIS's practice to implement massive policy shifts like this without providing public notice? Sadly, the threatened deportation of sick kids is just one example of this administration's mistreatment of immigrant children. It is not the only one. USCIS in particular has engaged in a pattern of developing policies that endanger children. Since, Mr. Cuccinelli, you took office, USCIS has eliminated automatic citizenship for some children of U.S. soldiers stationed overseas, introduced new barriers for immigrant kids fleeing domestic abuse in their home countries, and rolled out a public charge rule that has scared many parents into removing their children from essential health and nutrition services. Each of these acts is an affront to the central tenet of Chairman Cummings' philosophy that children are the living messengers that we send forward to a future that we ourselves will never see. The last hearing that Chairman Cummings attended was our September 11th hearing on this issue. Treating children with dignity was so important to him that he made a point to come down from Baltimore despite his advanced failing health. At that hearing, Elijah said, quote, "I really do think that we are in a moral situation. People are striving to live. They are trying to breathe the air of our country. They're trying to be better. They're trying to be healthy." Chairman Cummings, who himself was striving to live at that moment, trying to be healthy, wanted these children to have the same access to medical treatment that he did. We will honor the chairman's memory and the humanity of all those seeking deferred action by remaining vigilant, conducting rigorous oversight, and working to guarantee that this administration treats immigrants with the dignity they deserve. I welcome today's witnesses, Mr. Cuccinelli and Mr. Albence. We're delighted that you came today, but we want to make sure that we see no further bureaucratic stonewalling and confusion on these matters. We want clarity. We're here for answers, and we will not stop until we get them. We thank you for coming, and I'm now delighted to recognize the distinguished ranking member of our committee, Mr. Roy.